For the first time since anti-government demonstrations began on the Chinese territory, activists have attacked a Hong Kong official who was visiting London.
Well, the video that we just saw shows Hong Kong's Justice Secretary, Theresa Cheng, who was actually at the time in the UK giving a speech about successful dispute resolution, how she was targeted by dozens of protesters who pretty much mobbed her as she left the car. Now, the activists were yelling "murderer," and they also chased her down the street. The footage of the incident, the one that we just saw, shows Cheng being swamped and screamed at, and at some point she was even pushed to the ground and she injured her arm, and she was taken to hospital by ambulance for treatment. Now, an interesting detail is that Hong Kong's Justice Secretary, Theresa Cheng, is actually quite a key figure in the drafting of now withdrawn extradition bill that sparked all the protests in the first place. Now, China has, of course, already commented on this incident with Hong Kong's Justice Secretary.
The violent and lawless perpetrators, organized via online communication, committed a flagrant assault on the senior official of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. It has once again proved that their real intention is to destabilize Hong Kong. Now they're taking such violence abroad and into the UK. Their action deserves to be condemned, not only by the entire Chinese people, including the Hong Kong compatriots, but also by the British public and the international community unanimously.
There was a very formal response to this violent incident from the UK police.
A woman was taken to hospital by London Ambulance Service, suffering an injury to her arm. Inquiries are ongoing to establish the full circumstances. There has been no arrest at this stage.
One of the constant things we've seen since the protest broke out in Hong Kong, the protesters themselves declaring strenuously that their protests are peaceful. But yet we've been seeing them armed, lots of blockades. Can we break down that kind of difference? What's happening there?
Well, they do not seem to be as peaceful as they claim to be. Hong Kong has been crippled by protests since March, but practically all over the place, the media continues to call them peaceful. However, they have been seen to be quite familiar with medieval-style weaponry. They're even building watchtowers and even using catapults to fend off police. For instance, the Daily Mail put in its headline the story how protesters are using empty swimming pools to test petrol bombs. So it does seem that the mainstream media in general is not really criticizing the methods that they're using, but more somehow sort of romanticizing their struggle. While the protesters transform Hong Kong universities into weapons factories and arm themselves with petrol bombs, the media is still impressed by what they call novel methods of taking on riot police. So it does seem that the coverage is focusing so far very little on the danger posed to those caught in the crossfire.
打到個豬頭咁啊！黐線啊！呢班人黐線啊！
We heard from Shanghai-based Professor Benjamin Chow, who believes there's clear bias in the coverage of the protests.
Outside Hong Kong, I do not worry too much about prolonged escalation of violence. Any violence there that matches the level of violence of some Hong Kong protesters. The Hong Kong police is too constrained, especially because the protesters aim at escalating violence until the seizure of power. With more outside support, the Hong Kong police alone is really hard to contain the violence. But I know large part of the general public is hugely unsatisfied with the protesters. But right now, there is no effective way to unite their powers to fight against the protesters. Yet you see how some of these Western media are covering the story. I think it's yet another double standard of some Western media. Not only China needs Hong Kong, the whole world, I think, needs Hong Kong because the demise of Hong Kong will be one example of how one highly civilized and peaceful city could turn into hell overnight by some outside forces.